North Carolinians are resilient. If you're from the Tar Heel State, if you were born and raised in the greatest place in the continental United States, you know all about hurricanes. Some powerful, gusty winds, torrential downpours, floods. But when it finally passes, we're still here because we're resilient. Others are nothing more than a little wind and rain. We sit out on the front porch and enjoy the cooler weather as the storm passes over. We're still here because we're resilient. Now, quite often they tell us about a storm that's coming, a big storm that we need to prepare for. And then it's as if the hurricane itself knows it don't want none, and it veers back out into the Atlantic, making sure not to touch the great state of North Carolina. Other times, it's as if it wants to test us.
42 yards with 4 seconds left in the game. Jared Hall will hold Greg Warren. One of their captains will snap the ball. And the ball is good. North Carolina has won it.
The hurricane wants that smoke.
And if you catch it in the field of play, get down if you're Miami and don't try to run 15 yards.
He cannot scramble around and then throw it in the middle of the field. Time will run out.
Here's Mark, and he's going end zone. Farkas in! Oh, picked off! Intercepted by Tremaine Goddard!
As if we haven't already passed that test.
Once the clock becomes your enemy, I don't think we're there yet, but we're close.
He's looking for the end zone. Firing! Daz Newsome! Touchdown, North Carolina!
As if we haven't already weathered the storm and punched it right back in its cocky mouth.
Plenty of room to run. Williams bounces it again. Adds to his total. He's just banging into people, still going. He's just having fun tonight. He's still running. Man, dragged down inside the 20. Relentless. He didn't care what the score is. He's just having the time of his life out there.
Letting it know that we're here.
Gotta be an incompletion. For first down.
They're going to hand it. No. Van Dyke batted in the air. And is it intercepted? It is. Cedric Gray, I think, has intercepted it.
And we ain't going nowhere.
Smart job by Skinner. Now they're going to snap it on third down with 13 seconds left. Van Dyke. And it's picked up. Intercepted by Boykins. And North Carolina is going to win.
It's been 4 years since a hurricane rocked North Carolina. And hurricane season's almost over. Bring it.
You don't want none! You don't want none!
What's going on, Tar Heel Nation? It's your favorite North Carolinian, Russ the Tar Heel, and welcome to the Tar Heel Huddle. If you haven't already, if you're a North Carolina fan, a college football fan, please like, share, and subscribe. Exciting news, baby. It's finally Miami week, and I can't stinking wait. The North Carolina Tar Heels take on the Miami Hurricanes, 7:30 p.m. Saturday on ABC national television, and it's honestly going to be our first game against a top 25 opponent. Now, obviously, this game could have had much more going for it, if you will, if the Miami Hurricanes would have taken care of business like we all thought that they should, but they dropped their last game 23-20 against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets at home, and it was largely in part to a coaching blunder at the end of the game. You gotta take a knee and get the W. But hey, Miami fans, hey, we have been there. We have been there. Not necessarily with the coaching blunders. Not that bad, I wouldn't say. But we know all about losing to teams that you shouldn't, i.e. last year, the same Georgia Tech team that beat Carolina in Chapel Hill and really was the beginning of the derailment of that season, if you will. But fortunately, it's 2023, and that's all water under the bridge for us, baby. And we're sitting at 5-0, unblemished, and number 12 in the entire country in the AP and the coaches poll. So let's look at that right now with the updated standings. So no surprise here. Georgia, Michigan, 1-2. Ohio State is at 3. And then you got the Florida State Seminoles rounding out that top 4 right now in both polls. One of the interesting things is that Louisville, with their victory over Notre Dame, jumps up to number 14 and number 15 in those polls respectively, and Notre Dame fell all the way down to number 21 in both polls after that loss to the Cards. Duke holds tied at 17 and 18 in the country in both polls, and Miami somehow remains in the top 25 after that home loss in the AP poll, and they're number 26 in the coaches. So there's got to be somebody in the media that really, really likes the Canes in order for them to stay in the top 25 after that game. I mean, that was a tough loss. Let's just go ahead and talk about that real quick. That was a super tough loss for the Miami Hurricanes. It's a night game, first ACC game. They're in front of probably their biggest crowd of the year. I think it was at 90% capacity, almost 57,000 Hurricane fans there. It's a blackout. They got blue chippers everywhere, 4- and 5-star athletes everywhere. And then they lose to the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets that just got blown out in Atlanta to the Bowling Green Falcons that were 1-3. I mean, you just never know in college football right now. You always got to be on your P's and Q's. And thus far, the North Carolina Tar Heels have handled their business. And there was no greater example of that than last week's 40-7 win over the Syracuse Orange. Coming out of a bye week, it showed a ton of maturity by this football team. So there's a lot to be excited about if you're a North Carolina Tar Heels fan. And on the other hand, as a Miami fan, you know, those guys were real excited. 4-0, you know, they beat Texas A&M, and they're thinking that this is going to be a huge game for them, which it still obviously is. And now they come limping into Chapel Hill at 4-1. And the last thing that Miami wants is to go down 0-2 in the ACC and drop 2 straight, because they have been giving it to Mario Cristobal this week. I mean, the Miami fans have been on fire. But let's get into the Miami, North Carolina game. So the first thing that I want to look at is something that I always like to do when we look up these matchups, if you will. North Carolina, Miami is, and it really doesn't mean anything because just last week before Miami lost to Georgia Tech, the ESPN matchup indicator, which is through their analytics, they actually had Miami as a slight favorite against North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Well, Georgia Tech beats Miami in Miami, and all of a sudden it goes to from 50-50, basically a toss-up game, to the North Carolina Tar Heels have a 61.5% chance at beating the Miami Hurricanes this Saturday. Now, weather's supposed to be good, 65 degrees, might get a little chilly at night, it's going to be clear. And this is something that really surprised me before we delve into the specifics of this. The current line right now is North Carolina 3.5. Now, I'm surprised by that. And I'll tell you why I'm surprised by that, because usually as a home team, you usually get about 3 points kind of added on to that line, if you will. So basically what they're saying is that North Carolina is only slightly better than the Miami Hurricanes. Now, we'll talk about why I disagree with that here in a second, but I just thought that was an interesting line coming out of Vegas with you, if you will, with an over-under of 55.5 points. Now, let's look at the leaders for the Miami Hurricanes. Right now, you got Tyler Van Dyke. He's 98 for 135, 1,330 yards passing with 12 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. And before last game, he was 11-1. Tyler Van Dyke threw 3 interceptions against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, and those turnovers proved to be costly in that, it stalled a couple of drives, and, Tyler Van Dyke really struggled against the Yellow Jackets, so he'll be looking to bounce back against the Heels. Parrish is their leading rusher right now, 59 carries, 379 yards with 4 touchdowns, but they also have Chaney. They have a stable of running backs. I mean, Miami is big up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage, and one of the things that they're going to try to do is establish that run. They are going to try to be physical. It's going to be a very physical football game. And then you got Xavier Restrepo, 36 receptions, 478 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And this guy is a tremendous possession type receiver. He always kind of finds a seam and gets open. So it's one of those guys that you really got to keep an eye on. Restrepo, keep an eye on him. Now, for the good guys in Carolina Blue, Drake May, who has played out of his stinking mind the past 2 ball games. Last game, he had 442 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 on the ground with over 50 yards rushing there. I mean, he just absolutely balled out. On the season, 129 completions, 179 pass attempts for 1,629 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. And I'm telling you right now, Tar Heel Nation, Miami Hurricanes fans, you are about to face the best quarterback in the entire country. I don't care what Caleb Williams has done in the past. I don't care what he's doing right now. Drake May is that dude. And we're going to see, actually, you're going to see, unfortunately, for you, fortunately for us, what Drake May is and who he is this coming Saturday. Kid is a stinking baller. Omarion Hampton, 88 carries, 461 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And like I said in the Syracuse reaction video, Omarion looked real good carrying the football with his 15 carries against the Qs. And then you got Nate McCullum, who had another big game, 28 receptions, 354 yards, and a tutty on the season. Now, team stats. Miami Hurricanes right now are averaging 505.8 yards of total offense. The North Carolina Tar Heels are averaging 500 yards of total offense. And you can see right here that the passing is fairly even and the rushing is fairly even, if you will. Carolina's averaging more through the air. Miami really tries to instill that run game often. They're averaging over 200 yards rushing on the ground, which is fantastic. I mean, that is something that the North Carolina Tar Heels are going to have to deal with, and we'll talk about that here shortly. Now, the yards allowed. Miami, 268.4, which is a very respectable number, if you will. And they did not play bad against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. I mean, for all intents and purposes, they held them to not a lot of offense, and it was just a couple of turnovers. And, I mean, there were a couple of variables in that football game that kept Georgia Tech in it. So it really was kind of a miracle-type win for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. You see here, though, Tar Heel Nation, the North Carolina Tar Heels defense has tremendously improved. I mean, last year we're averaging giving up like 470, 80 yards a stinking game. You see right there, 335.2, 216.8 passing, and 118 yards rushing. Listen, those numbers are super good when you consider how good our offense is. I mean, it is night and day defense from last year to this year. And I even think that we're averaging under 20 points a game given up right now as a defense. I mean, when is the last time that North Carolina has done that? You see right here, Miami's last 5, North Carolina's last 5. Obviously, it shows that Carolina's 5-0, Miami is 4-1 with that blemish to Georgia Tech. So delving into the Miami Hurricanes and their season thus far, okay? Miami started off with a game against the Miamis, Miami, Ohio, and they handled them 38-3. They beat Texas A&M in a huge game for the Miami Hurricanes, 48-33. And you know what? Texas A&M has proved to be a fairly decent team. They've played a lot of teams tough. They had multiple opportunities to beat Alabama yesterday. They didn't get it done, but Texas A&M has not been a slouch. So I would consider that a decent victory. Then they followed up with Bethune-Cookman, and then they beat Temple in Philly. Now, you know, one of the things that I've been talking about is that I think that Miami fans were getting real excited, and I guess there's some legitimacy to what they were saying, is in they're 4-0, and they handled business. They did. The Miami Hurricanes handled business. But one of the things that I felt like was lagging in what they had already accomplished was the fact that they had not been yet really, I mean truly tested. Even in that Texas A&M game, you know, beating them by 15 points, they had not really been tested. And I told a lot of Hurricanes fans in my area that one of the things that they needed to look for against this Georgia Tech team is that they're bipolar. You know, on one hand, they're playing Louisville tough, and then what do? They drop an inexcusable game against Bowling Green at home when they were up 14-0, and then the 1-3 Bowling Green Falcons scored 38 unanswered points on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets in Bobby Dodd Stadium. Just unbelievable meltdown, and Georgia Tech fans had to have been losing their stinking mind. But then what do? In true ACC fashion, then they go on the road against the number 17 Miami Hurricanes, and they beat them 23-20 on just a crazy ending of the game. I mean, yes, Chaney was down, but yes, Mario Cristobal should have just taken a knee and got the W. But then Georgia Tech takes over with like 20-something seconds left from their own 25. Haynes throws some crazy pass that the corner or the safety, whatever he is, just mistimed his jump. So Georgia Tech gets it with about 50 yards away, 10 seconds, 45-yard line, whatever it was. And then your best safety, Cam Kinchins, bites on an underneath route as if that matters at all and lets this kid get free on the right side of the field to score a touchdown with like 2 seconds left. I mean, just a crazy ending to that football game. And Georgia Tech, once again, man, they do this to teams. Now, Carolina ain't letting that happen this year because we're going to get some vengeance on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets in Atlanta, but that is for another time. Now, unfortunately, they handled business against the Miami Hurricanes, and they gave them that blemish. So Miami is coming off an extremely emotional game. You saw their players on the sidelines just completely shocked. Now, a team like that can go one of two ways because we all know that the Miami Hurricanes are full of talent. Athletes everywhere, big bodies everywhere. They have the talent. One of two things can happen here. You can either get extremely pissed off and you can make this North Carolina game like a do or die event, or you can get caught soaking and looking back at the mistakes that you made during the Georgia Tech game. And I really am interested to see where the psyche is for this Miami Hurricane team because I really think that they took that loss very hard. I know their players did. I feel like, Mario Cristobal did. I know that their fans did. Like, I'm telling you right now, it doesn't matter what happens for the rest of the year. Hard Rock will not be that packed again, because once you let those guys down, man, they won't be back for 2023. So it'll be interesting to see how that impacts the Miami Hurricanes faithful. Now, I fully anticipate them showing up in numbers in Chapel Hill. When I was there in 2019, there was a lot of orange in the crowd. So that'll be interesting to see where the fan base's psyche is. So let's get into Russ's 3 keys to the game. Key number 1, the North Carolina Tar Heels must be the more physical team. Miami is going to come in there and they are going to try to assert dominance against you, period. That's what they're going to do. They are huge on the offensive line. They are huge and athletic on the defensive line. And that is one of my very few concerns, if you will, about this game. Is just Miami trying to line it up and cram it down our throats. Now, in the past, it would really be a concern of mine. But the North Carolina defense has done a much better job in their run fits, tackling in open space, and running to the football. And so I think that this is, whereas this is a Miami strength, I think that North Carolina has kind of turned a corner on that, and I'm not as worried about them being dominated, if you will, up front. But I think that it's Miami's strength and that it's imperative that North Carolina not let them get that ground game going. They have got to control that ground game, and that all starts with being the more physical team. Now, on the offensive side, it's the same thing. That offensive line has got to keep Drake clean. It's got to keep Drake clean so that he can be back there and sling that football around. So, key number 1, North Carolina, which they should be. They should be. They should be the more physical team. Now, key number 2 to the game, and it's going to tie into key number 1, load up the box. I'm going to tell you why I'm going to say that. Because Tyler Van Dyke has got to prove to me that he can beat us through the air. Now, a lot of people know that Tyler Van Dyke is not a mobile quarterback. He's not considered a dual threat. He's tall. He's pretty much stationary. He's got a decent arm. But I'm telling you right now, I don't know that Tyler Van Dyke is very good at reading defenses. And I think you saw that against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make Tyler Van Dyke beat me in the air. I'm going to make sure that Chaney and Parrish don't get hot. I'm going to make sure that I got every run gap fitted. That's what I'm going to do. And Tyler Van Dyke is going to have to prove to me that he has the poise, that he has the moxie to go 60 minutes and deliver his team to victory lane. I personally don't think that he's made like that. I really am not trying to down the kid. When I watch him play, he seems super uncomfortable during the Georgia Tech game, and that's just the way that I feel about it. So you can either agree or disagree. Hey, TVD, you're going to have to prove me wrong. And if you prove me wrong, then I'm going to tip the cap. But one thing I'm not going to let happen is I'm not going to let Miami run the ball down my stinking throat with Parrish and Chaney. It's not happening, fam. Not happening. Load the box, good run fits, make TVD beat you through the air. And key number 3 to the game, going to the offensive side, we're going to have to run the football a little bit. But you know what? We got athletes every stinking where on the outside. With the return of Tez Walker, Nate McCullum, J.J. Jones, Kobe Paysor, you got the tight end group with John Copenhaver, Kamari Morales, you got Bryson Nesbitt, who had a touchdown catch the last game. Bro, we have weapons everywhere, guys, everywhere. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my Heisman candidate quarterback, and I'm going to take all those weapons and I am going to absolutely demolish you in the air. And every once in a while, I'm going to sprinkle in a couple of draws just to keep you stinking satisfied. But I am going to air it out. Air it out. You got weapons all over the place. And Miami's strength is going to be that line of scrimmage. Hey, bro, you're going to have to hold it down on the outside. And you're going to have to cover the middle of the field. And you're going to have to cover them tight ends. And you're going to have to cover 4 or 5 good, really good wide receivers. So, key number 3 to the game, air it out. Let Drake May be Drake May. Now that leads us to my score prediction. Now, before I get into that, I want to talk about, once again, I am super interested in Miami's psyche going into this game, coming off that gut-wrenching loss to Georgia Tech. There's no way that they were supposed to lose that game. I still think that it's going to be hard for those kids to not be shell-shocked, even going into Monday, Tuesday. I mean, that's just on your mind. Terrible play calling by Mario, accompanied by your best safety biting on an underneath route with time running out, and then getting beat deep. That's inexcusable. And so I got a question, man, where they go from here. You know, is the trust still there? Do they have trust in the coaching staff? Do they have trust in one another? And then you have North Carolina that's just coming off of their most complete game of the season. They're about to play in front of a sold-out crowd, 7:30 night kick against their first top 25 team. Bro, I think Miami is unfortunately meeting North Carolina at the wrong time. And this game is North Carolina's statement game. And the statement game is going to say this, that you have to start seriously considering after this football game if the North Carolina Tar Heels are the best team in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Yeah, I said it. And my score prediction for this game is going to shock a lot of people because Miami is a competent, good football team and they have a lot of athletes. But I just don't think that they can run with the Heels, and I think that the Heels have enough defense to, for the most part, really squander anything that Miami's going to be able to do efficiently. The North Carolina Tar Heels get a resounding, convincing 37-17 victory over the number 25 Miami Hurricanes, which really propels them going into the second half of the season. This is a huge football game. North Carolina has beat Miami 4 times in a row. And the last 2 times that the Tar Heels beat the Canes, you know what happened? It was a Tyler Van Dyke interception in the latter stages of the game. That's huge, man. And if you don't think that that's on that kid's mind, it is. He knows his history against the Tar Heels. And it might even make him want to press to get rid of the bad taste of that history. But it's not going to come down to a possession like it did the last 2 games. North Carolina is coming off their best game. They have a ton of mojo right now, a ton of motivation. Mac Brown has this team focused. And if you don't think that he is just harping on it all week, making sure that they practice hard and they're focused, do you think Cedric Gray is not in there letting them know the opportunity that's at hand? You think Drake May is not in there? Rah, 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 rah. This is our chance to really make a statement to the entire country. Oh, it's going down this Saturday. 37-17 North Carolina. I want to know what you think, Tar Heel Nation. Heck, I'm sure the Miami Hurricanes fans are going to get in here too. I want to know what you guys think as well. Don't be messing up my video with all your dislikes. Just comment down in the comment section what you think. North Carolina, Miami. Is it going to be a blowout? Hey, tell me if you think Miami is about to ring the bell and they're about to have a statement win of their own. If you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe to the content, and I look forward to seeing all you guys on Saturday. One more thing before I get out of here. Coach Coop has been kind enough to invite me onto his show, so you guys need to look forward or look out, for that little insight show that Coach Coop does where he's going to invite me on and we'll talk about the North Carolina-Miami game. Super cool dude. If you haven't already, you need to go subscribe to his channel, whether you're a Miami Hurricane fan or not. He's got great content, man, and I'm really looking forward to linking up with Coach Coop to talk Tar Heels and Canes. Like I said, if you haven't already, baby, like, share, subscribe. We will see you on Saturday for the live stream. Stinking can't wait. Let's go Tar Heels, and we will catch you on the next one.
I'm a Tar Heel!